Hey everybody, and welcome to Dominion Cards, the video series where we take a strategic, in-depth look at various cards from the board game Dominion. Today we're looking at Watchtower. This is a 3-cost action and reaction card from Prosperity, and it says, draw until you have 6 cards in hand. Then it has a below-the-line effect that says, when you gain a card, you may reveal this from your hand to either trash that card or put it onto your deck. So when you play Watchtower as a normal action card, it's a simple draw to X card. It's terminal, it draws until you have 6 cards in hand. Now when it's in your hand, you can react it to any incoming cards to either top deck them or trash them. And it doesn't have to be on your turn, it'd be any time a card comes in, as long as you have it in your hand. Now, the reaction can be used any number of times. This is because it reveals from your hand, and then it goes straight back into your hand, ready to be revealed for the next card that comes along. So it's a lot like Moat in this regard, right? Once you've got it in your hand, it's there to react at every opportunity. So Watchtower as a draw to X card, just it's simple playing it for an action effect. I'd say it's pretty good as a draw to X card. Very happy to build a draw to X engine with Watchtower. One of the main things with Watchtower is that it is very cheap, and it draws you up to 6, which is pretty good for draw to X. There are some draw to X cards that don't draw you up that much, so Watchtower's doing pretty well in that regard. The fact that it doesn't have to compete with 5-cost cards is a big deal. One of the biggest problems with a card like Library, despite drawing you to a bigger hand, the fact that it costs 5 makes it hard to justify buying it as opposed to other cards, but Watchtower's very, very cheap. Now, of course, this doesn't really get around the fact that draw to X is usually worse than more traditional draw, just straight up, plus a certain number of cards, and it does require other certain cards in order to work well. Stuff like Festival is the classic draw to X enabler. Now, Watchtower still has other uses because it's a reaction card, so even if you're building a more traditional draw deck, still not uncommon to see people add 1 or 2 Watchtowers into their deck anyway, and sometimes they will even play them for draw to X because you might end up in a situation where that's still a good thing to do, even though you're building a more traditional draw engine. So one issue that draw to X engines sometimes tend to have is reliability. So you've got these cards that can potentially draw quite a lot, and you may not have that many copies of them as a result, and in addition to that, you're usually trying to fill your deck with cards that don't draw. They're stop cards. So like Festival, for example, is a village, got no plus card on it. And that allows you to take advantage of the draw to X. Your draw to X sort of undoes the fact that those other cards are stop cards. But the problem is that if you don't draw the Watchtower at the correct time, you're normally stuck there. You don't have it, and you can dud quite easily, especially if you don't have it in your initial starting hand. That's usually a worry. Because unlike other normal villages that are drawing you cards as you play them, you search through your deck, and you don't get to do that with stuff like Watchtower. Now, the good news is that Watchtower's got a reaction here that you can top deck engine pieces, and that includes other Watchtowers. So at the end of your turn, you can buy a Watchtower and effectively react it with the Watchtower in hand and slap that next Watchtower on top of your deck, and then you do actually have one for your next turn. So that's really, really good for the reliability aspect of Watchtower. But you can also react mid-turn as well. You might have a workshop type card and you can gain a village and you can top deck it, and then you can immediately draw it with that same Watchtower, in fact. So if you think you might not have certain cards in your next, the next time you draw, you may be able to use Watchtower to make sure that you do have those cards. This also makes it slightly less punishing to have multiple Watchtowers in your hand. So one of the things with cards like Library is that if you draw 2 or 3 libraries together, that's a bit of a problem because you just get all these libraries stuck in your hand, sort of getting in the way of drawing more. But with Watchtower, you still might have some value out of that. You still get to do this top decking and all that with it. So that means that, it's not so bad if you maybe get a little bit too many Watchtowers for the amount of draw that you need, because it's not like they're going to waste, right? You're still getting this value from them. And the good news is that by getting perhaps a little too many Watchtowers, you sort of improve the density of Watchtowers in your deck. It means you're more likely to find them, and that means that you're less likely to dud your hand when you're trying to draw through with draw to X. So There's a lot of little subtle things that sort of help Watchtower actually function quite well as a draw to X card and like prevent your turns from basically dudding a lot, which sometimes happens when you build like the Festival Library engine, for example. Now, in terms of cards that allow you to top deck stuff, I would say that Watchtower is probably one of the best ones. I consider it fairly elite in terms of like being a top decker, if that's something that you want. So the good news is that it's an engine card, and so, it's actually useful to have in your deck, generally. But also, you don't need to play it to get this top deck value. All you got to do is draw it into your hand, and then you get to top deck from any sort of source at all. And so I think that Watchtower might actually be like the best card for getting the top deck effect in the entire game. And one thing that's really important by the fact that it does it via a reaction effect is that it allows you to use this effect at basically any time. So if you look at the other top decker in Prosperity, Royal Seal, you only get to use that during your buy phase most of the time because you've got to actually play the Royal Seal and it's a treasure. There's stuff like Harbinger that only gets to top deck stuff that's in your discard. Artisan, top decks only things that are already in your hand. But, Watchtower can top deck gained cards, which means you get to sometimes get exactly the card you want and then top deck it without having to worry too much about, what else is in your hand, so to speak. It's also really, really cheap, and that's good because it means you can start taking advantage of this quite early. And sometimes, the early game is very important for getting your deck up to speed, and so being able to just like top deck stuff pretty quickly at the start of the game, sometimes very powerful. You're seeing things as shuffle earlier sometimes during those crucial early shuffles where things can have a big difference. Right, like you buy a Watchtower, you see it turn 3, maybe you can like buy a Trasher and top deck it for turn 4 or something, right? Like, you can sometimes speed things up quite a lot by doing that. But top decking in general is a sort of effect that's nice to have, I would say. And we've talked about it a lot in other videos like Artisan, so I'm not going to go into too much here. But generally, it is nice, it's faster, it helps set up your next turns and so on. Like, it makes it easier to gain and play stuff. So it's all just sort of a little speed up benefit that I guess sometimes is hard to properly quantify, but you're certainly happy to always get the option to do it if you can. Now, the other thing that Watchtower does as part of its defense is that it can trash incoming cards, and the most immediately obvious benefit of this is bad cards, junk like Curse that's coming in, and so you can use Watchtower kind of as a defense against junking attacks. Now, one thing that's nice about using Watchtower as defense against junking attacks as opposed to something like, say, Moat, is that when the junk comes in, it goes straight into the trash, and this actually means that the pile goes down. Like, you actually remove a curse out of the game rather than just leaving it there and having it potentially come around a little bit later. So this is somewhat more effective in the sense that the junking attack stops working sooner. This means that it just has slightly less opportunities to still add junk into your deck. You're not sort of postponing it until later. You're actually just saying this junk's never going to enter my deck and just wiping junk out of the game. So that sort of is a lot better at disincentivizing you having to actually get your own junker in response. Like sometimes with Witch, the best thing to do is to put all the junk in your opponent's deck. But with something like Watchtower, maybe you don't have to bother because the junk's never going to come into your deck, or it's going to have very few opportunities, and then the junk's just going to run out anyway, right? You don't have to rush to try and get all of the junk into your opponent's deck first. Now, by being a draw to X card, it's not just junking attacks that Watchtower protects against, because you get some sort of defense, or at least a counterplay, to hand size attacks that include stuff like Militia. So Militia drops you down to 3 cards in hand. You get to keep a village, a Watchtower, and something else, and then play the village, play the Watchtower, draw all the way back up to 6. And this, in some ways, is kind of like sifting or filtering past any bad cards. Like if you discarded Coppers and Estates out of your hand, it's sort of like pushing past them, really, just swapping them for something else, by then drawing a replacement with your Watchtower. Now, it's a bit like Moat in that it's defense via having a reaction card in your hand. And in the Moat video, we talked a lot about how one of the things that you need with that, because attacks happen in between your turns, is you've got to have the Moat in your starting hand for next turn. And so moat benefits quite a lot from like top decking effects. So you can like top deck a moat with Artisan at the end of your turn, and then you have good defensive coverage. Well, one of the nice things with Watchtower is that it's a top decker. It actually comes built in with that top decking bonus. So you get to take advantage of this much more often. If you are prepared to buy another copy of Watchtower, you can buy it and potentially you just immediately top deck it with a Watchtower in your hand. And then you're guaranteed that you've got that attack defense for next turn. Now, we've talked about junking attacks and hand size attacks. Of course, it doesn't really protect you against other kinds of attacks. So, like, Bandit's still going to trash your treasures. Rabble's still going to try and put victory cards and curses on top of your deck. Like, it doesn't do anything about that. But in terms of the two most common types of attacks, I would say junking attacks and discard attacks, hand size attacks. There we go. Watchtower's pretty good, actually. It's just a much better engine card than something like Moat, even though it's still cheap terminal draw. And it has all these other benefits as well. You haven't just got... Sometimes with Moat, you've just got this card that's just sitting in your hand and you never do anything with it. You're just looking to top deck it every turn and just never play it. But Watchtower, it gives you these other benefits as well, all this top decking power. So it's a lot better in that regard. It's pretty good, I would say. Certain circumstances, it's a very solid defense card, Watchtower. Now, of course, Watchtower, because it can trash cards, sometimes what you can do is you can gain a card that has an on-trash benefit and just instantly trash it. You never actually plan to have the card come into your deck. You're never looking to remodel it away or something. You just buy it just to trash it. And there's just some examples here of where that sort of thing might be quite useful. So Rats, one of the big problems with Rats, you can't necessarily use it as a trasher to get thin because it keeps throwing more Rats into your deck. But if you have a Watchtower in hand, you get to trash the Rats that it tries to gain, and you'll actually draw another card because of the on-trash bonus of Rats. So now it becomes Rats like a trashing laboratory, which is actually pretty good, right? Just one copy of Rats doing that. That's pretty good value, I'd say. And I've got Silk Merchant and Sycophant here as examples of cards that have both an on-gain and an on-trash. It's worth noting that when you trash with Watchtower, you still get the on-gain benefit as well. So if you buy Silk Merchant with Watchtower, maybe you don't want this extra terminal draw card in your deck, but you get 2 coffers and 2 villagers from it. Sycophant, now to be fair, that's actually a pretty good card to go with Draw to X. It discards a lot, it's non-terminal, it gives you money. So Watchtower, Sycophant, and some Village actually makes for a fine deck on its own. But sometimes if you've got extra buys, you can buy these Sycophants and just immediately trash them to also, I suppose, run the pile down so your opponent doesn't get any, but you get all these favours with it as well. You can get quite a lot of favours on the cheap doing something like that. And, you can always have too many Sycophants in your deck that you don't want. And Squire can become a very, very cheap way to gain any attack card. You can just buy the Squire, immediately trash it, pick up a Familiar or something, or, a Goons that cost 6, right? So it'll just get you anything on the cheap. So it's just some examples. There are, of course, more examples, but you always want to look out for, Watchtower. It's not really a trash card, typically. It doesn't actually get your deck thin, but you still get to take advantage of these sort of things with it. Now, there are some of the cards that try to give you junk sort of as a penalty in return for a stronger effect. One of the nice things with Watchtower is that you can then just trash the junk that's coming in and get all the benefits without actually needing to take on the junk at all. So I've got some more examples here. So Stonemason is one where you can overpay for it to get 2 action cards. So if I paid 7 for Stonemason, I get to take 2 5-cost action cards, which is pretty great for the one buy. But it also comes with this Stonemason as well. Well, sometimes that's fine, but sometimes I really don't want it. It's just like a stop card. I don't have enough actions to play it. I get to just throw it in the bin with the Watchtower, chuck it in the trash, should I say. Bin, is that English slang? So, it can just keep your deck a little bit thinner in that regard. Treasure Trove, when you play it, you gain a gold and a copper. Well, the gold is great, but I'm not really so keen on the copper, so I might be able to just throw that away as well. Cemetery is a victory card, which is not bad, but on gain, you get to trash up to 4 cards from your hand, and that's really good. But honestly, I don't really want the Cemetery in those cases, so what I get to do is I get to gain it, and do the trashing from my hand, and then just throw the cemetery straight in the trash and never have to worry about that useless stop card in my deck. And then you've got cards like, for example, Wild Hunt, stacks up point tokens on it, and then at some point you get to choose to gain an estate in order to take all the tokens. Well, estates aren't that great, so what if we just threw the estate straight in the trash as we tried to gain it with Wild Hunt? So just little things like this sometimes. I've got some events as well. Banquet gains you 2 coppers when you buy it in order to get a non-victory card costing up to 5. Well, that's really harmful, 2 coppers to your deck, but buying 5 cost cards for 3 sounds really good. Well, the nice thing with Watchtower, of course, is that you don't have to take the coppers at all. You just get to effectively get non-victory cards that cost 5 for 3 money if you have a Watchtower in your hand, which is incredibly good value. And then there's Desperation that gives you 2 extra coins. If you gain a curse with it, well, you don't have to gain the curse at all. It's just free money until the curses run out if you have a Watchtower in your hand, which is great. Well, you only get to use it once per turn, but it's just extra money. So there are more examples, there's loads more examples. These are just a bunch just to get you thinking about the sort of things that you can use this admittedly slightly strange effect from Watchtower for. Now, another crucial bit of Watchtower's effect here is that it really, really benefits excess buys. So if you have quite a lot of buys, and sometimes you're generating loads of them, so you might have stuff like Workers' Village as your only village. You just need the villages, so you buy them, and then you just end up with like 6 buys per turn, and you don't really know what to do with them normally. Watchtower gets to spend all of those buys on junk cards like Coppers, Curses, Ruins, and then immediately throw them in the trash. Well, okay, so why would you ever want to do that? Well, this actually sort of has just directly 2 potential benefits for doing that. Number 1, especially in 2-player games, the Curse pile and the Ruin pile are actually pretty small. There's only 10 in each, and it counts as one of the piles for a 3-pile ending. So if you are just churning through those piles, it might only take 2 or 3 turns and you can just empty a pile. And if you're building a nice engine with like Watchtower, it might be the case that a sudden 3-pile ending is actually to your benefit, and this just sort of gives you control around doing that. And the other one is that in addition to Watchtower acting like a defense to junking attacks being played, it may have a chance to just empty the pile before your opponent even has a chance to play those junking card attacks. You could just buy the curses straight out of the pile, throw them straight in the trash, and then they're just not there anymore for someone to be playing their witches against you, and you just disable their attack a lot sooner. And so, this is another way in which it's even more effective as a defense card against junking cards and something like Moat, because you get to just short-circuit the number of times that they can actually effectively play that attack against you by doing this. But there's actually another way in which these excess buys can sometimes be very, very good, and that is in combination with certain other cards. So I call these cards like buy multipliers. I guess it's not strictly accurate, but I've used that term before. There are some cards that effectively give you like a scaling bonus for all the cards that you've bought or gained during the turn, and similarly they don't care about cost. So some of them do stuff like Livery from Menagerie. We're not going to talk about that one here, but just other classic ones that I have examples for here. What's really important about these other cards that just say, I don't care what you gain, just as long as you're gaining cards, we're going to give you this bonus and it's going to keep going up the more cards you gain. Watchtower just gets to funnel all of these excess buys into buying and trashing cheap junk. And normally you can't really do that with these cards, because if you just spend your turn buying like 3-4 coppers per turn, well, your deck's just going to fall apart completely. But Watchtower gets to take advantage of these bonuses by effectively not harming their deck quality by putting all this junk into the deck, because they just get diverted straight to the trash pile instead. When these sorts of cards are available with Watchtower, it's normally very, very important that you try and grab as many sources of plus buy as you can, especially the classic cards like Workers' Village, Market Square. These cards can really make these buy multiplier cards very, very strong indeed. So the classic examples are Goons. This is actually in the same expansion as Watchtower, and Goons Watchtower is almost kind of a combo. Allows you to just spend all the buys from Goons on coppers, throw them straight in the bin, and just gain loads and loads of points. And you're not basically making a deck collapse by doing it. So you get to do it again next turn. It's even to the extent where if you can get a lot of buys, you're actually better off not sometimes playing as many goons as you possibly could. Like, you don't get as many because you just earn so many points from a smaller number of goons, and like just more reliably drawing them instead. Like, maybe you spend the extra village support on a bit more draw cards or something so that, you can be more consistent with it. You just score so many points because, every copper that you buy is potentially like 2-3 points, and you get to buy like 8 of them or something. Just so many points every turn. Merchant Guild and Garrison, these are sort of similar in that they're giving you coppers or plus cards next turn, respectively. It's the same sort of deal as goons, really, just buying coppers, curses, throwing them all in the trash, getting loads of value. And then there's stuff like Triumph as well, which has gained you 1 point per card you've gained. You can't stack that like you can with goons, but you can still use it to get a lot of points. And, you get to throw the estate that it gains into the trash as well, so even better value there. Watch out for these combos specifically with Watchtower. They're very, very good with Watchtower sometimes. Like, with stuff like Garrison, you can start drawing most of your deck almost straight away, instead of relegating these benefits to like the penultimate turn that you have of the game. You just get to start doing it pretty early sometimes. So in summary, Watchtower, I think it's pretty good. Community rankings have it almost exactly smack bang in the middle of all the cards. It was like, I checked, it was 176 out of 360 or something, so it was like very, very close, directly to the exact middle. Personally, I think that's underrating it ever so slightly. I consider it a little bit better, slightly above average. I mean, not substantially better, just, I think it's pretty good all around. So Watchtower's a very, very cheap engine component, and that's quite important. Cheap cards are very good. And this is actually very, very cheap, I think, for what it provides. You get very good value from Watchtower, because it's got quite a lot of effects on it. And these combinations of effects, they're pretty nice on their own, but they tend to sum together to be something that's quite strong on the whole. It does these weird things with engines when you've got a lot of plus buy, in that, it just gives you this unusual 3-pile support by like emptying curses or whatever. And, of course, the other cards that benefit from that. So it does quite a lot of things. It's really the combos more that you're looking out for because it's a draw to X card, but there's actually quite a lot of situations. There was even a joke early on in one user in particular in like the Dominion strategy forums way back when. He used to say that Watchtower comboed with every other card in the game. Obviously it's not true, but it raises sort of a general point, I think, about Watchtower in that the effects that it have actually are quite nice in a lot of circumstances. Do keep your eye on this card. It can surprise you sometimes. Actually, a lot better sometimes it has been than I would have thought. So what we're going to do now is we're going to head over to the online client. We're going to generate some games with a Watchtower in it, and we're going to see how important it is in those kingdoms. So here we go. This does not have Platinum Colony in it, but I did see Potion. What do we got? Wow, we got Transmute and Philosopher's Stone. Well, that's terrible, isn't it? Oh, boy. So we've got Mining Village City and Native Village, all as villages. Watchtower is our only draw card. There is also Grand Market, but there's no trashing except for Transmute. Here's something interesting. What if we trashed coppers with Transmute, and then, instead of gaining another copy of Transmute, we just use Watchtower to throw it straight in the trash? You could actually get thin with Transmute here, which is quite funny. I don't know how many of them you would want. There is one major problem, though, and that is that there's Embargo on this board, and Embargo, of course, being the card to shut down potion cards. So the one time when Transmute in these kingdoms might actually finally have some value, and unfortunately I have to take on curses in order to get at least my first copy of it, possibly. So that's sad. But maybe that's worth it. I don't know. It seems like it's way too slow to build the engine in that case. The only other thing that's really going on here is Grand Market, but it's quite hard to get Grand Markets because we've got so many coppers. And like the draw is actually not great. Like Watchtower isn't that good here. So what's the other alternatives? Well, you'd say there's like Philosopher's Stone, big money, but again, there's Embargo to just shut that down really hard. So I'm actually not sure what I'd even do here. I guess there's Cellar, which is quite nice with Watchtower. I feel like it's almost certainly got to be a grand market thing. You got Cellar to push past coppers. You've got villages. You've got Watchtower. I almost, for a laugh, just want to do the transmute thing anyway. Like, it doesn't matter if the first one gives me a curse, right? Because I only really need to get one. I can sort of get as many transmutes as I want by just gaining them directly with transmute. And I get to get golds when I trash estates, which is actually nice for buying Grand Market, come to think about it. Am I actually doing a transmute thing? Has Watchtower enabled me to do silly transmute stuff? Probably. Where's the plus buy? Oh, there's Grand Market, so I can get the curse pile empty and potentially turn on cities as well to be sort of draw in that regard. Draw to X is not great here, admittedly, but I do have stuff like transmute, lowering my hand size, and Cellar. Sheesh. And embargo? Maybe. It's disappearing money, isn't it? What a kingdom. Wow. Surely this is all bad that I am saying, right? This has to be a stupid, stupid deck, right? Does it just lose to big money? Does it really lose to big money? I mean, Grand Market's pretty good. You would get some decent endgame control with this and all those buys. Well, I suppose the problem is you can't just big money, because what if they just embargo golds and silvers? Right? You get to do that. If they try big money, you're just all right, I'm just going to embargo those, what you can do now. And you could even embargo provinces and just stop them getting ahead as easily. And then for you, it doesn't matter, because you can then buy out the curses and then trash them. Or you get to, with your Watchtower, you can embargo all of the big money stuff and then just ignore the curses, because you just get to throw them in the trash with your Watchtower, so it doesn't really affect you. So I think you have to do the Watchtower engine, and for that reason, this is amazing cause for celebration. I'm opening Potion, and I'm going to buy Transmute. I don't believe it. Wow. So we've actually done it, guys. We found the Transmute Kingdom. Incredible stuff. Thank you, Watchtower. I think we're actually doing it. I think embargo is actually quite important as well on this kingdom. Interesting. Really makes Watchtower worth it. Ha. That's quite exciting, actually. I really like that one. What have we got here? No Colony Platinum again. There's Potion again, and that's because there's Alchemist. So we've got Mountebank, which straight away is a big old junking attack. So that's quite nice for Watchtower, I suppose. We've got Village as a village. There is Loan and Remodel as trashers, so we actually can get thin. There's Swindler, just to be annoying. Are they good Swindler targets? Not really. I guess you get to put a lot of potions into your opponent's deck with Remodel, but you probably don't do that straight away. You get to turn potions into remodels and monuments, I guess. What have we got as draw instead of Watchtower? Well, there is Courtyard, but honestly, I think... Oh, there's Alchemist as well. But I think I like the Watchtower deck here. I like Watchtower as defense against Mountebank. I'm going to get Alone and get Thin, and I'm going to do Watchtower. And we have got Monument, the scaling payload, but we do have to watch out because there's only one village pile. And maybe what we get to do, I'm just wondering if we can do things where on our turn we get to remodel a Watchtower. We have two Watchtowers and we get to remodel a Watchtower into another one and then top deck it for next turn and basically get defense against Mountebank that way. That sounds quite nice. Build the engine otherwise. We open Loan and we open, I don't know, do we open Remodel with Loan? I guess we're just saying we're never going to hit 5 in that case, but maybe open Watchtower actually. No, I'm just thinking, we really don't want Mountebank to ever work. So I kind of want to get a Watchtower engine on as soon as I can. So I think I open Loan Remodel in that case, actually. We do have Pawn for plus buy as well, which is okay. Actually, Pawn is fine with draw to X as well, because it can just be action coin, and then you draw up with Watchtower. So Watchtower seems very good here. Swindler is a bit of a pain. Eventually that starts causing you big trouble. I think... To be fair, Alchemist does protect against it. If you... I was going to say, if you can get 6 Alchemists, you can arguably protect against Swindler, but then, of course, you don't have the Watchtower in your hand. And, of course, there's always Courtyard to put Watchtower back, isn't there? Of course, we don't need to do remodel stuff. Courtyard puts a Watchtower for next turn, so we get to basically ignore Mountebank completely here. This is pretty good, actually. Yeah, Loan, remodel. We're going to do the Watchtower deck. We're going to have Pawn and Monument as our payload for the Watchtower deck. And possibly Mountebank if our opponent isn't doing it. We get to crush them with that. Otherwise, we just sort of ignore Mountebank this game. Swindler's a pain. We're going to play it anyway, I guess. Yeah, and maybe we only go up to like 1 province per turn and then we just start remodeling provinces or something. We could do that as well. I'm just a little bit worried about the amount of village support that we basically don't have in this kingdom. I think when we open remodel, I'm actually going to be turning them into villages, the estates that I remodel, like as quickly as I can, and the coppers get to turn into like pawns and 1 courtyard. But otherwise, yeah, the Watchtower engine seems really good here, and we're sort of making use of all of its functions, really, so that's really good. So, Watchtower, very important on that kingdom. That's 2 out of 2, where Watchtower was excellent. Okay, another non-colony kingdom. And we got Potion again, because there's Vineyard. So we got Masquerade as very good trashing. We also have Forge. Masquerade's pretty good. I noticed that there's no village. Straight away, that's a problem. There's also Mountebank. Well, I open Masquerade for sure. What else do we do, though? Like, what would you do here with a Masquerade Kingdom? Well, there's Mountebank. You get to put in a little bit more junk into your opponent's deck with Mountebank than they can reasonably expect to get rid of with Masquerade. So is it just Masquerade Mountebank? There is Militia as well, which is quite good, but, I mean, I would rather play Mountebank, I guess. Yeah, maybe. I think that's what I do. I mean, do I buy harems at some point? Maybe, right? But I think we're literally just doing like Masquerade into Mountebank, and we just, over time, we're just looking to try and basically play Mountebank reasonably often, and someone's deck's going to be rubbish. And, you know, yeah, they do get to try and like pass some of the curses back to you, but it doesn't really matter because you're both masquerading and you just want someone to basically get their deck so bloated that they can't do anything anymore, while you eventually get thin with Masquerade enough to just sort of do this not brilliant big money-ish type thing, and maybe you just get like harems a bit as well. I guess that's probably all we do here. It's okay. Do you still Watchtower anyway? Like, do you just have a Watchtower as like a defense card that you're never expecting to play? I guess Watchtower is nice if they try and militia you, right? You get to just do it for draw to X. Well, is it that good? Because you don't really want to play it anyway, to be fair. But it is nice at protecting against Mountebank. Maybe we do buy Watchtower anyway. Maybe, like, Mountebank is such a big threat here that it's worth getting Watchtower as defense. To just block some of them and to try and get ahead that way, and like you're never really expecting to play Watchtower, and because you have Watchtower, there's also no point in them getting like militia either. Like, it sort of protects you against both attacks in a way, I guess. So maybe I do. So I think I still actually buy Watchtower here, but I'm not really doing much with most of the kingdom here, to be fair. Maybe Loan is fine as well, like Masquerade Loan we open with. We're just going to eventually like buy silvers. We're going to get up to Mountebank. We're going to play that a bit. Yeah, it just focuses around Mountebank, this board, I think, long term, and so Watchtower is nice for that. You're just trying to slip your opponent, basically, into a losing position, I think you do there. Here's another non-colony board, no potion this time. We got Mountebank again, but there is Watchtower Goons, haha, except there's no village. Ah, well, never mind. We have Ambassador, Lookout, and Trading Post as trashing. But what's the point in that? We have Goons, Mountebank, and Ambassador all as attacks. There's Embargo, there's Smithy, Workshop, Pawn. So the lack of village really dominates this game. I'm just wondering, is Mountebank better than Goons in the case of no village? I think so. I mean, admittedly, you know, you do have Watchtower, and you do have Ambassador as well for getting thin early. which is fine. You still junk your opponent, so a mountebank player, can't really ignore that because they'll just get the junk back again to them. So I guess you've got to open Ambassador, right? And if I'm opening Ambassador, I think I want to open Silver over Lookout, but maybe Lookout's fine. Maybe do Lookout Ambassador, and then you hope that you get a chance to buy a Silver at some point. But I'm wondering if we ever do, if you open Ambassador Lookout, right? Like, do you ever get a chance to buy a Silver, ever? Well, there is Embargo, right? To be fair, there is this one-shot Silver effect that you can do, so maybe that's all right. I think we want to get thin because, again, it's just sort of a mountebank thing, but, there is Watchtower. The thing is, you can't really use Watchtower as draw to X against goons in this case because you're going to have too high a density of action cards, potentially. But it's another game where we're just trying desperately to not get swamped with junk. And for that reason, because there's Ambassador as well, actually I think, again, you get some Watchtowers just as junking attack defense, right? You just do that, and eventually, I guess the curses run out, don't they? And then what? I don't know, we just have these terrible decks, I suppose, and the game doesn't really go anywhere. Like, I don't really see how we proceed anywhere from there, but early game you just have to stop yourself, like, just getting swamped with junk. And I don't really know what else you would do after that, because there isn't really anything to do, really. It's just build up big money from there, I suppose. Maybe you shift into goons big money in that case, like you get rid of your mountebank, because you don't really care too much about the copper, and it's sort of goons big money to get points back up again. Maybe that's what we do. Maybe it doesn't matter that they have Watchtower and they might draw back up again because they won't be playing goons that turn if they do. So that's, I think, what I'm going to go with in the end. So Watchtower is okay here. It just protects us a little bit against getting swamped with junk, which is the really important bit. We want that to happen to our opponent instead. So here's the last one. We've sort of gone 4 out of 4 for Watchtower. It's been really important in 2 of them. There is, again, no Colony Platinum here. That's fine. But there is Possession. That makes me sad. Okay, what do we do? We have a village with nobles. Okay, good. We got one. Oh, so many expensive cards here. I'm not used to nobles being halfway through the top row. Moneylender gets us thin. That's all right. We get to get rid of coppers, and then there's Forge, and we can forge all of our states at some point into like a nobles, hopefully, or into a 4-cost. There's Ironworks Mill, which is pretty good as well. Really, you want to be doing a Torturer Chain, I think. That sounds pretty good, but there is Watchtower to basically shut down the Torturer Chain because they just choose to gain a curse and then throw it in the trash. And maybe they get like Forge to just destroy all of them eventually anyway. So how good is the Torture Chain? Probably not that great, but it is a draw card. The only problem is that Nobles is the only village, and it seems like it's going to take a really, really long time to actually build something effective out of that. So what else is there? Well, there's no plus buy. Is it a Duchy Duke thing that we do? Well, I think the problem is if you just try and focus on a Duchy Duke thing, well, there's Ironworks Mill into Duchy Duke, thinking about it, right? I mean, in that sort of scenario, we don't really care about about Torturer, excuse me. I don't know if we actually buy Watchtower, though. What we really want is you can Ironworks Mill. Well, if you're just gaining a lot of mills, you don't then want to draw with Watchtower. I'm just a little bit worried that the Duchy Duke gets hit hard by a Torturer thing. But it doesn't care if it gets possessed, right? Like, Duchy Duke doesn't care that much. I guess you get all the duchies and dukes stolen from you eventually. Well, they don't get stolen, but, you have all of these turns. You have these turns that aren't really that great for the possessor, to be honest. Yeah, I don't think I ever want Possession here. And it's certainly nice if you do a Duchy Duke thing that you don't have stuff like Forge in your deck. You certainly don't want someone to be like forging your mills into provinces when they possess you, right? So, do we still get Moneylender anyway as a Duchy Duke player, and then we just go for lots of mills? Probably, right? Like, we open Moneylender and Silver, and then we get an Ironworks, and we just get a load of mills, and then we just shift into going Duchy Duke. What do we do in that case about incoming curses? Nothing, I guess. We just sort of hope that we get enough density of mills. But of course, the other player's going to do that, and we're not actually going to have that many mills. In that regard, how good is a Watchtower to try and stop us getting some curses? How long does it take to build the Torturer engine? I don't have to worry about it for a while, right? But we certainly don't want to be discarding when we hit the Torturer. So, I suppose the Duchy Duke player can open Moneylender and Embargo, and they can just embargo the nobles, right? And you can just keep embargoing the nobles. But then again, the nobles engine has Watchtower for draw, and it doesn't have to take on the curses with embargo, right? It just shuts down the embargo trick anyway, so that doesn't really work. Actually, maybe the engine's better, but I don't know what the end goal is of the engine. You just play Torturer a bunch, and you just have a Watchtower, I guess, to protect against other Torturers and embargo as like a defense, I guess. But there's no way to top deck it. Well, you can just buy another one, or you ironworks another one. Maybe we have multiple ironworks. Maybe we're just doing Nobles, Watchtower, Torturer sort of engine. We don't have that much village support, and we just shift into getting a bunch of mills, and then eventually we can forge the mills or something, probably. You forge the Moneylender with something, an ironworks or whatever, Maybe that's what we do. I could go either way on Watchtower here. I don't think it matters that much, to be honest. Or we do the Watchtower draw engine, and it actually matters a lot because we got mill. Maybe we do that instead in some Torturers. Not that many. Okay, so Watchtower's good here. I think I've changed my mind. We've got to do the Watchtower engine. That sort of beats everything else out. So, yeah. Watchtower was very good in all of those kingdoms. I mean, there were some you only used it as defense, but it was really important in every single one. Right, this is why I think Watchtower's a little bit better than people say. And we got that Transmute Kingdom. Wow. So Watchtower, just lots of utility. It does a lot, and I think it's a very good card. It's not overpowered, and it's quite cheap. But yeah, great card. I love it myself. So anyway, I hope this was useful for you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.